Good morning. So we're back with another video and another breakdown for you, and hopefully you are finding these of value and they're helpful in your in-season GAA program and your in-season GAA performance. So what we want to talk about today is off-feet conditioning. Okay, we're going to break down what it is, so break down the definition of off-feet conditioning and explain exactly the benefits behind it. Then we're going to talk about when to use it. So when do you actually plug this into your training? When do you plug it into your overall performance plan? Some of the myths behind off-feet conditioning, some of the mistakes that people make. And then lastly, we'll finish up by how to use it. Now, I think off-feet conditioning is one of the untapped tools that not a lot of GAA players and not a lot of athletes in general have fully capitalized on just yet. But I do think it's coming up, and I'm a big fan of it. I'm very bullish on it, and I use it with all my own training, but also with a lot of the athletes that I work with, as I'm going to touch on why I am so strongly in favor of it. So what is off-feet conditioning? And it sounds very, very straightforward. And to be honest, I like to keep the definition as simple as that. Because essentially what it is cardio that removes or limits the impact through the foot and ankle. It is conditioning done off feet. That's essentially what I like to define it as. And it is as simple as that, to be honest. But some of the benefits behind it, and this is really where I think the huge USP is for off-feet conditioning and why I'm so bullish on it. Because firstly, you can recover faster from it. Compared to an on-feet conditioning session where you might be running up and down the pitch, you might be doing pitch runs, etc. The amount of loading going through the foot and ankle and just the systemic fatigue that is generated from a session like that is going to take you far longer to recover from compared to an off-feet conditioning where there's no load going through the foot and ankle, or very little. So you can recover very fast from these sessions. Typically, you can do a session on Monday and pretty much good to go by Tuesday. At the very latest 2 days after, but generally it's 24 hours and even less depending on the sort of session that we do on, which we'll touch on now shortly. So the recovery is very, very quick from these. Secondly, the fitness, or we like to include these as a way of topping up our fitness, and they're very, very useful in keeping our fitness sharp, because this leads into the third benefit, because you can customize to any energy system that you want to develop. So whether it's high intensity conditioning, whether it's low intensity, these are really easy to customize, and also they're a great way to keep our fitness sharp, especially, as we'll touch on now in a minute, in certain periods of the year. So we can look at using them for one, recovery advantage, two, to keep our fitness sharp, and they're very effective at that. And then lastly, they're easy to customize to the energy system or the specific weakness in your fitness that you have. So whether you find yourself gassing out coming down the stretch, whether it's you find yourself gassing out after high intensity bouts, whether it's your repeated sprints, that's where you really struggle, you can target these off-feet conditioning sessions to any of them specific qualities. God, I'm enjoying these now, just doing breakdown plus coffee in hand. It's our bet. So when do we use it? This is often a big question that I get asked. When should you use off-feet conditioning? So when can it come into your program? Well, firstly, a big reason that I am so bullish on it, and a big reason why I'm such a big fan of it, is you can use them in season quite easily. And this relates to the benefits here. In season, we normally think about tight fixture lists. We don't have abundance of recovery time. We're on the pitch 2 to 3 times per week. So where are you going to try and catch up on your fitness or try and improve your fitness if you're looking at the traditional method of on-feet loading? It's very hard to find gaps in that schedule to do that. And if you do find gaps in it, if you do it on your off days, etc., the recovery time then is going to be quite a long period of time. So you're not going to be fully recovered going into your next training session or your next game. So the knock-on effects and the legacy that an on-feet conditioning will leave is a lot longer. So in season, I'm a big fan of using off-feet conditioning because you can recover fast, and also you can keep your fitness topped up, or you can even see some improvements. With a lot of the guys that we work with inside the academy who are in season playing 1 to 2 games per week, they are still seeing fitness improvements by using off-feet conditioning sessions throughout the whole year. And that is a really big aspect to using these conditioning sessions. Secondly, obviously, if you're injured, you can't run, the natural progression will be to use off-feet conditioning, and they're a very good way of keeping fitness up, because when you're injured, it's not an opportunity just to completely stop conditioning, stop any fitness work. You want to try and maintain a good level of conditioning, so then whenever you go back onto the pitch, that your conditioning is already at a good level, so you're not then accumulating excessive fatigue that could then result in another breakdown. And lastly, just for general long-term fitness, I think you can program these in very easily. And if you're just looking to, maybe you're not an athlete, maybe you're not with the goal of performance all the time, then off-feet conditioning is a really effective way of just building long-term fitness, especially if you're talking about, say, general qualities like aerobic fitness. So building that aerobic base, the bike is a really useful way to do that. So some of the common misconceptions around off-feet conditioning that I hear a lot of athletes talking about and a lot of athletes asking me is, firstly, that we can only do HIIT training, or that whenever you think of off-feet conditioning, you just think about absolute balls out sessions where you're going 100% intensity and you're flat out and no rest, and that you're absolutely burnt out after and you're going to be gassed for a couple of days. But really, off-feet conditioning is probably the key benefit to it is, or one of the useful ways is actually looking at low intensity cardio, because of the advantageous recovery benefits, where you can program this in nearly every day or every other day if you wanted. If you're looking at low intensity cardio, that's where I think a huge benefit of it is, because you can do it so frequently across the week. Because of the low loading and the recovery benefits there, and also you're going to see some general fitness adaptations. Secondly, that people think it's not accurate, and of course the big caveat that a lot of coaches would talk about is it's not going to be as specific as running itself. And yes, of course, to get better at something, you need to do the specific activity that you're trying to get better at. So the best way to get better at running will be to run. However, the pros versus the cons of doing that in season and in these specific time zones, I feel the pros actually outweigh the cons here in terms of doing off-feet conditioning versus on-feet conditioning, and the accuracy of that. You will see fitness improvements across the year once you're consistent with it. Alongside your pitch volume, I really do think there is ways to see improvements in it. And the downfall of a lot of coaches programming this for athletes is that they don't use an accurate method of actually prescribing off-feet conditioning. A lot of athletes just go off the general, 30 on, 30 off, or 15 on, 15 off, or 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, or whatever. And they don't have any sort of targets, they don't have any sort of prescription method behind it. So what I like to do, and a way to prevent this, is actually using our maximal aerobic speed. So our max, or our maximal aerobic speed, is just the lowest speed in which we can achieve our maximum oxygen uptake, or our VO2 max in some cases. And in this instance, we're going to be looking at the maximum speed that the athlete can cycle at. Okay, so I use this as a prescription method, and it's just a really effective and useful way to prescribe off-feet conditioning. So how you work this out is you complete a simple test like the 5-minute test, which will be a good aerobic test. You can do this obviously in the on-feet conditioning. You can look at a 5-minute time trial. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to divide the distance over the time. So you do, let's say, 2,800 meters, then you divide that by 300 seconds, because you want the time in seconds, and then that's going to spit out your mass or your maximal aerobic speed that you're going to use then for your bike sessions. So that could be anywhere, let's say 9.5 meters per second. Then what you're going to do with that mass score is you're going to multiply the mass by the intensity that you want to use. So whether it's 100% mass, that would be 9.5 by 1, and then you multiply it by the actual duration of the in seconds of the rep that you need to complete, or the session that you want to complete. So for example, if you want to complete 30 seconds on, 30 off, you're going to do 9.5 by 1, which is 100% of your mass, and then you multiply that by 30, and then that's going to spit you out the distance that you want to be hitting, or your target distance that you want to achieve in that specific rep. So now straight away the athlete has specific targets that he needs to work on, or that he needs to achieve in that session, which becomes immediately super accurate, and a super good way of progressing the athlete throughout the in-season and seeing nice linear progressions across the year. So then you can start doing PBs. You can do, let's say, 100% plus a 5% PB. So that will then increase the distance that the athlete has to achieve. So a really nice way of eliminating that inaccuracy of on-feet conditioning is just using our maximal aerobic speed and prescribing based on that. Okay, so into the exciting parts. How do we actually use it? Okay. Sorry, this coffee's literally gone cold now at this stage. So we've a load of different methods, and what I'll do is just walk you through exactly how you can use these and just give you a couple examples, and then you can program them into your own sessions and into your own performance plan. So first one, we have low intensity steady state, and this will be around 30 to 45 minutes at around 80 to 85% of our mass. So again, you plug that 80 to 85%, so that will be 0.8 or 0.85 into your mass formula. Then that's going to spit out the distance that you want to get for, let's say, you do work out how many seconds are in 45 minutes. I can't do that maths off the top of my head. So you're just going to work that out, and then you multiply your mass that you worked out from your test. So that could be 9.5 example, then you multiply that by 0.8, and then you multiply it by the amount of seconds in 45 minutes. And that's going to be your target distance. Should be very comfortable. That low intensity steady state, again, is a great example of a way just to develop out our aerobic capacity. So a really easy way to get volume in and get a distance into the legs without actually on-feet loading, without actually, I suppose, having that recovery legacy left by an on-feet conditioning session. But with this, you could plug these in 2 to 3 to 4 times per week even, and you will probably be able to complete them very comfortably and recover pretty well. Then we have extensive intervals. This is something like 8 minutes on, 3 minutes off, and this would be at a slightly higher intensity of 85 to 88% of your mass. We have long high intensity intervals. This could be 4 minutes on, 2 minutes off at 90 to 95% of our mass. So the intensity is going up, the duration is going down. Again, the recovery time in between this will be a little bit less, so that's going to drive up the actual intensity of the session as well, and you'll find it a little bit more taxing. And then 4 minutes on, 2 minutes off are pretty tough going. Then we have intensive short intervals. So we have 2 minutes on, 1 minute off at 100 to 105% of our mass. So the nice way as well with these are exactly the similar structures that you could use for something like on-field conditioning. And if you're, especially the first couple, if you're looking to develop aerobic energy system, I would be looking at long, slow, steady state running, your extensive intervals, your long, high intensity intervals, and even your intensive intervals there in terms of that. But as we go into, let's say, our intensive intervals and even the long, high intensity intervals, that will be more looking at our anaerobic system there. So our higher intensity conditioning levels. So the way I kind of break it up is Early on in the week, we'll be looking at more aerobic conditioning to promote recovery, just to get the legs moving, and also see some general fitness adaptations there in terms of our aerobic system. Then towards the latter end of the week, so closer to game time, we'll maybe look at maybe some anaerobic conditioning, but generally it will be more so some of these short high intensity sessions, or the Tabata, and that could be 30 on 30 off at 110% to 115% of our mass, or the Tabata is 20 on 10 off at 120% of our mass. So they can be a nice way of just getting a really high intensity boost, and what that's going to do is more so work on priming the nervous system and priming the neuromuscular system for that game readiness. So I like to even bring them down probably closer to under 10 seconds as all out sprints. So maybe I'd add in a last one there as like our phosphocreatine system, and that's just going to be working at that maximal to near maximal intensity just for all out for 6 to 8 seconds. And that's a really useful way of just priming the body without actually going out and doing a sprinting session, which is obviously going to be a really good way of priming the nervous system. But working on the bike, we can utilize them short, really high intensity bouts just to prime the body, prime the tissues, prime the nervous system for that level of speed and that level of, I suppose, exposure. So that's kind of how I use it. I look at the slow, longer duration intervals as a way of developing the aerobic system. I'll typically use them closer to match day +1, +2, and then as it transitions through the week, I looked more towards the phosphocreatine system, the anaerobic system. I'd use them sparingly because they will be a little bit more taxing and a little bit harder to recover from because they're kind of in the middle ground. And then the Tabata, the really short intervals, or the phosphocreatine, I'll use roughly about match day minus maybe 3 or 2, and just keep that session really, really short. But if you're in your pre-season or if you're in your off-season, definitely looking towards the anaerobic systems, and the aerobic systems can be a really nice way of building over that general capacity. And then as you get closer to competition, closer to game days, you can look at them shorter high intensity busts, but just keeping them at a shorter duration and keeping the session duration quite short as well. So that's how you use it. That's some of the misconceptions, when to use it and what is it. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that's given you a nice maybe food for thought to plug in some off-peak conditioning into your in-season plan. And other than that, I'll catch you in the next